Hi everyone, my name is Yusuf Oluwafemi Salako, popularly known as Ori David, a 500 level student of law, University of Lagos, and founder of the Ori David Consult. If you are new here, say welcome to you, and do not forget to click on the subscribe button so you don't miss out whenever we put up new videos. And today we shall continue from our last discussion in company law. Today we shall be looking at corporate power, the second arm of corporate power, which is what I've termed corporate political animals. And what we intend to interrogate is that we want to examine whether under the Nigerian corporate law, companies or corporations are allowed to participate in politics, and that is what is basically known as corporate political participation. And this can be detected by the time we examine the text that confers on the company the power of a natural person. It then means that the convenient starting point is section 38 subsection 2 of the Company and Allied Matters Act, that is CAMA. Section 38 subsection 2 provides that a company shall not have or exercise power, indirectly or directly, to make a donation of any of its property or funds to a political party or a political association for any political purpose. So which means that section 38 subsection 2 of CAMA is saying that a company shall not, whether directly or indirectly, cannot make donations, that is, cannot make donations to a political party. Donation is the same as contributions. So which means that the company cannot contribute to any political party for any political purpose. Now, the first point to note and consider is that if section 38 subsection 1 of CAMA has provided that a company shall have the power of a natural person to its full capacity. Now, a natural person is a person that has the right to association as guaranteed in the Constitution. But the question then is how possible it is for the Act to then limit this particular power, because you said in 38.1 that a company will have the power of a natural person, and then in 38 sub 2 you are now saying that the company cannot participate in politics. Participation in politics involves, or it accommodates, the right to freedom of expression and the right to also be a part of association, which are fundamental human rights that are not derogable without necessarily meeting the provisions of the Constitution in section 45. But we must also point out that when we interrogate section 38 subsection 1 of CAMA, we will find that the introductory words says that it takes to the extent in which the memo of the company permits or the act permits. So which means that the power of the natural person can be limited either by the memo of that company or by the act. So it then means that pursuant to section 38.1 that says that the act can limit it, then the act has limited the power of the natural person of a company, and to say that the company cannot participate in politics. And another thing is also what's further interesting about section 38 subsection 2 is that it is a mandatory provision in the sense that you cannot afford to violate it. You cannot afford to say you want to act contrary to it, which means at the end of the day, as far as CAMA is concerned, a company shall not donate or that is contribute to a political party for any political purposes. And we have also been able to establish that this is a limitation, but then the limitation has been captured by section 38 subsection 1. But then the question is this: if a company has the power of a natural person. And then the Constitution has guaranteed that a natural person has the right to freedom of expression and also to freedom of association. The next question we want to ask is, how possible is it for the company to be able to restrict that right? Yes, the law is right that this right, that is freedom of expression, the right to association, they are not absolute rights. That is, they are derogable. And that means that if you look at the provision of section 45, it says that it provides for the grounds upon which these rights may be derogated for. Section 45 provides that rights that are listed or enshrined in section 37, 38, 39, 40 and 41 of the Constitution shall not invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, if it is in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality or health, or if it is for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedom of other persons. Now, the inquiry to be made is whether the prohibition of companies from participating in politics is crested on any of these grounds that are entrenched in section 45. It is my considered view that this is not so, because I still do not see what amounts to a threat to public safety, public health, morality, order, and defense if companies should participate in politics. In fact, the section provides that such law must be reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. I also see nothing that is paradoxical or antithetical to democratic tenets if companies are allowed to participate in politics. It is also my humble submission that in fact it aligns with the dictates and ethos and tenets of democracy, especially constitutional democracy, for companies to actually participate in politics. Why? Because it is the people that are at the corridor of powers that would be the ones to actually enact laws, and these laws will be applicable and will affect companies. So is it not then natural that you allow these companies to then dictate their future and hold their own destinies to their hands? So the moment you prohibit them, it means that you are leaving them out of dictating the caliber or the set of legislatures that will be sent to the house that will enact laws that will actually affect them. However, what is further important in our interrogation is to consider and advert our minds to the provisions of the Constitution that has to do with political participation, and the relevant sections are section 221 and 229 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And now, when you look at section 221, it provides that no association other than a political party, that is, other than a political party, no association other than a political party. That is what it said, that there is no association other than a political party that shall canvass. He said that shall either canvass for votes or contributes. So what he is saying is that it is only the association that can canvass for votes or contribute to a political party has to be a political party. So which means that a company does not necessarily, would a company fall under the category of the association? This is where section 229 becomes very relevant. Section 229 now defines the word association to mean any body of persons, either corporate or incorporate. Any body of persons. That is defining what association means, to be a body of persons, either corporate or incorporate. Now, a company is a corporate body, and you can see this in section 37 of CAMA. Section 37 of CAMA said a company is a corporate body. Hence, it is then settled that this definition that has been afforded to the World Association pursuant to Section 229 accommodates companies, and consequently, it means that the provisions of Section 221 is applicable to companies. In a nutshell, or as far as the Constitution is concerned, companies are not allowed to participate in politics. However, from this constitutional exercise, the question that is very relevant to the discourse is whether the Constitution, that is the provisions of the Constitution, are coextensive with the provisions of CAMA. What this means is that we want to ask, yes, CAMA prohibits political participation. Yes, the Constitution prohibits companies from participating in politics. But then the question is, are they saying the same thing? Now, when we interrogate Section 38, subsection 2, we will see that it only says that a company shall not make donations or contributions. So the company shall not make donations or contributions. So which means a company may not participate in politics, but this is to the extent of not making donations or contributions. But if we should look at what Section 221 of the Constitution provides, it said the company shall not canvass for votes and shall not make contributions. So it then tells you that CAMA is somewhat restricted. It's somewhat limited in scope compared to the provisions of the Constitution. Because under CAMA, what the company cannot do as far as politics is concerned is that they cannot make donations. But under the Constitution, it says they shall not canvass for votes and they shall not also make contributions. And then it will appear as if maybe there is really no distinction to be made by this. Now, the point is this. As far as CAMA is concerned, what CAMA has prohibited is that it says companies cannot only just make donations or contributions. Now, the idea is that there are two things to actually consider. There is something that is called contributions and what is known as independent expenditures. Now, when we speak of contributions, it means that the company fixes the money, then the company hands over control of the money to the political party for the party to then spend as they deem fit. That is making contributions or donations. But when it comes to independent expenditure, it means that the company is the one that is doing all it can to support a particular candidate. So which means that what political participation involves two entities, either the individual candidate or the party. If you are giving the party the money, then that means you are making what is called contributions. But if you are going to be the one to spend the money, either by making ads or by making banners, posters, if it is the company that is doing that, what the company is doing is the company is spending independent expenditure. So, and that means the company is canvassing for votes. If we look at what provisions of CAMA is saying, it simply prohibits donations, that is contributions. It does not cover what is known as independent expenditure. It is only the Constitution that has then covered it by saying that a company shall not also canvass for votes. So now, what this has also shown us is that CAMA is limited, but what the Constitution is somewhat encompassing. Now the question is, which particular law will then bind corporations? Can corporations go ahead to rely on under the provisions of CAMA to say, well, we cannot contribute, but we can actually make independent expenditure, which means we can canvass for vote? But if companies should do that, that would be an express and cold violation of the provision of the Constitution. And like we have, and it is straight law pursuant to section 1 subsection 3 of the CFRN that you cannot make any law that will be contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. So which tells you that at the end of the day, in the primacy of law, the provisions of the Constitution will outweigh that of the Act. Now, it is important to also state that the intention of the drafters of the Act, that is CAMA, would be that they intended to create what is also obtainable in different climes, like in the US now, with respect to political donations. Take, for example, in the US, corporations are prohibited from making expenditures to influence federal elections, and even similar restrictions exist in many states' electoral laws. However, even in the US, corporations are allowed to make donations to political action committees. So corporations are allowed to make donations to the PACs, that is the political action committees, and this is what is referred to in the US as independent expenditure. So in the US, you can make donations to this PAC, that is known as independent expenditure. And the reason is because the PACs generally they have strict limits on their ability to advocate on behalf of specific parties or candidates, or even to coordinate their activities with political companies. They are subject to several restrictions. But you must also understand that although the ability of corporations to engage in such independent expenditure, it has been subject to intense debate. However, you hear this US Supreme Court in the case of Citizens United versus Federal Electoral Committee. It was a case that involved the creation of a film that was critical of Hillary Clinton by a non-profit corporation. Then the Supreme Court held that the free speech clause of the First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting independent expenditures for political communication for political communications by corporations, including even non-profit corporations, labor unions, and other associations. In Germany, what is obtainable is that both individuals and companies may make unlimited contributions to the political parties. So under Germany, companies can make contributions. Which is what is not permissible under both CAMA and even under the Constitution. Now, for the UK allows for both contributions and even independent expenditure. The only thing is that there are no limits on contributions, but there are limits on independent expenditure. That is what is obtainable in the UK. They allow contributions and independent expenditure, but just that there are no limits on contributions, but then there are limits on spending, that is independent expenditure. But limits or no limits, it tells you that what under the UK law, corporations can actually engage in what is known as corporate political finance. Now, the question it needs to be stated that whatever the aspirations of CAMA may be or might be, what is important for us to know is that the EA of 2010, that is the Electoral Act of 2010, also shares the same perspective of CAMA. If you interrogate Section 90 of the Electoral Act of 2010, you see that it provides that the Commission shall have the power to place limitation on the amount of money or other assets which an individual or group of persons can contribute to a political party. Now, what we are trying to point out is that even in your Electoral Act, it only speaks about contribution, which is the same thing that CAMA is saying. It does not encompass what we know as canvassing for votes. By the end of the day, in the primacy of law, the Constitution will rank higher to these other laws, be it the Act, be it CAMA or the Electoral Act. So which then tells us that at the end of the day, companies cannot participate in politics. either by making donations or by contributing. That is by spending our independent expenditure. This is because the Constitution forbids that. So we must have a form of broad readings of all these laws, be it CAMA, be it the Electoral Act, or the Constitution. And that is that for what I term the corporate political animal. Till I see you next time, I remain Yusuf Oluwafemi Salako, popularly known as Ori David. And do not forget to click on the subscribe button so that you don't get to miss out when we upload new videos. Stay jiggy.